Everyone, of course, has read the brief and unsatisfying bulletins of the rest of our Antarctic sojourn. Some hours after our landing, we sent a guarded report of the tragedy we found, and reluctantly announced the wiping out of the whole lake party by the frightful wind of the preceding day, or the night before that. 11 known dead, young Gedney missing. People pardon our hazy lack of details through realization of the shock this sad event must have caused us, and believed us when we explained that the mangling action of the wind had rendered all 11 bodies unsuitable for transportation outside. Indeed, I flatter myself that even in the midst of our distress, utter bewilderment, soul-clutching horror, we scarcely went beyond the truth of any specific instance. The tremendous significance lies in what we dared not tell. What I would not tell now, for the need of warning others off from nameless terrors, is the fact that the wind had wrought dreadful havoc. Whether all could live through it, even without the other thing, is gravely open to doubt. The storm, with its fury of madly driven ice particles, must have been beyond anything our expedition had encountered before. When airplane shelter, all, it seems, had been left in its far too flimsy and inadequate state, was nearly pulverized, and the derrick at the distant boring was entirely shaken to pieces. The exposed metal of the grounded planes and drilling machinery were bruised into a high polish, and 2 of the small tents were flattened despite their snow banking. Wooden surfaces left out into the blast were pitted and denuded of paint, and all signs of tracks in the snow were completely obliterated. It is also true that we found none of the archaean biological objects in a condition to take outside as a whole. We did gather some minerals from a vast tumbled pile, including several of the greenish soapstone fragments whose odd 5-pointed rounding and faint patterns of grouped dots caused so many doubtful comparisons, and some fossil bones, among which were the most typical of the curiously injured specimens. None of the dogs survived, their hurriedly built snow enclosure near the camp being almost wholly destroyed. The wind may have done that, though the greater breakage on the side next to the camp, which was not the windward one, suggests an outward leap or break of the frantic beasts themselves. All 3 sledges were gone, and we have tried to explain the wind may have blown them off into the unknown. The drill and ice melting machinery at the boring were too badly damaged to warrant salvage, so we used them to choke up that subtly disturbing gateway to the pass which Lake had blasted. We likewise left at the camp the 2 most shaken up of the planes, since our surviving party had only 4 real pilots: Sherman, Danforth, McTeague, and Ropes. In all, with Danforth in a poor, nervous shape to navigate. We brought back all the books, scientific equipment, and all other incidentals we could find, though much was rather unaccountably blown away. Spare tents and furs were either missing or badly out of condition. It was approximately 4 p.m. after wide plane cruising had forced us to give Gedney up for lost, and then we had sent our guarded message to the Arkham for relaying. And I think we did well to keep it as calm and non-committal as we succeeded in doing. The uneasiness. The most we said about agitation concerning our dogs, the first frantic uneasiness, was near the biological specimens, was to be expected from poor Lake's accounts. We did not mention, I think, to display of the same uneasiness when sniffing around the queer greenish soapstones and certain other objects in this disordered region. Objects including scientific instruments, airplanes, and machinery both of the camp and the mooring, whose parts have been loosened, moved, or otherwise tampered with by winds that must have harbored singular curiosity and investigativeness. About the 14 biological specimens, we were pardonably indefinite. We'd said only the ones we discovered were damaged, but that was enough that was left of them that proved Lake's description wholly and impressively accurate. It was hard work keeping our personal emotions out of this matter, and we did not mention numbers or say exactly how we found those which we did find. We had by that time agreed not to transmit anything suggesting madness on the part of Lake's men, and this surely looked like madness to find 6 imperfect monstrosities carefully buried upright in 9-foot snow graves under 5-pointed mounds, punched over with groups of dots and patterns, exactly like those on the queer greenish soapstones dug up from the Mesozoic or Tertiary times. The 8 perfect specimens mentioned by Lake seemed to have been completely blown away. We were careful, too, about the public's general peace of mind, hence Danforth and I said little about that frightful trip over the mountains the next day. It was the fact that only a radical lightened plane could have possibly crossed a range of such a height, which mercifully limited that the scouting tour to the 2 of us. On our return at 1 a.m., Danforth was close to hysterics, but kept an admirably stiff upper lip. It took no persuasion to make him promise not to show our sketches and the other things we brought away in our pockets, not to say anything more to the others than what we agreed to relay outside, and to hide our counterfilms for private development later on, so that the part of my present history will be as new as to Pabody, McTeague, Ropes, Sherman, and the rest it will be to the world in general. Indeed, Danforth is closer mouthed than I, for he saw, or thinks he saw, one thing he will not tell even me. As all know, our report included a tale of hard descent, a confirmation of Lake's opinion that the great peaks are of Archean slate, or of very primal crumpled strata unchanged since at least Middle Comanchean times, a conventional comment on the regularity of the clean cube and rampart formations, a decision that the cave mouths indicate dissolved calcareous veins, a conjecture that certain slopes and passes would permit of the scaling and crossing the entire range by seasoned mountaineers, and a remark that the mysterious other side holds a lofty and immense super plateau as ancient and unchanging as the mountains themselves. 20,000 feet in elevation, with grotesque rock formations protruding through a thin glacial layer, with low, gradual foothills between the general plateau surface and the sheer precipices of the highest peaks. This body of data is in every respect true so far as it goes, and completely satisfied the men at camp. We laid our absence of 16 hours, a longer time than our announced flying, landing, reconnoitering, and rock collecting program called for, to a long mystical spell of adverse wind conditions, and told truly of our landing on the farther foothills. Fortunately, our tale sounded realistic and prosaic enough not to tempt any of the others, into emulating our flight. Had any tried to do that, I would have used every ounce of my persuasion to stop them. And I do not know what Danforth would have done. While we were gone, Pabody, Sherman, Ropes, McTeague, and Williamson had worked like beavers over Lake's two best planes, fitting them again for use despite the altogether unaccountable juggling of their operative mechanism. We decided to load all the planes the next morning and start for our old base as soon as possible. Even though indirect, that was the safest way to work towards McMurdo Sound. For a straight line flight across the most utterly unknown stretches of the eon-dead continent would involve many additional hazards. Further exploration was hardly feasible in view of our tragic decimation and the ruin of our drilling machinery, and the doubts and horrors around us, which we did not reveal, made us wish only to escape this austral world of desolation and brooding madness as swiftly as we could. As the public knows, our return to the world was accomplished without further disasters. Our planes reached the old base on the evening of the next day, January 27th, after a swift non-stop flight on the 28th. We made McMurdo Sound in 2 laps. The one pause being very brief and occasioned by a faulty rudder and the furious wind over the ice shelf after we cleared the Great Plateau. In 5 days more, the Arkham and Miskatonic, with all hands and equipment on board, were shaken clear of the thickening field ice and working up Ross Sea with the mocking mountains of Victoria Land looming westward against the troubled Antarctic sky, and twisting the wind's wails into a wide-range musical piping which chilled my soul to the quick. Less than a fortnight later, we left the last of the hint of the polar land behind us, and thanked heaven that we were clear of a haunted, accursed realm where life and death, space and time have made black and blasphemous alliances in unknown epochs since matter writhed and swam on the planet's scarce cool crust. Since our return, we have all constantly worked to discourage Antarctic exploration, and we have kept certain doubts and guesses to ourselves with splendid unity and faithfulness. Even young Danforth, with his nervous breakdown, has not flinched or babbled to his doctors. Indeed, as I have said, there is one thing he thinks he alone saw, that he will not tell even me, though I think it would help his psychological state if he would consent to do so. It might explain and relieve much, though perhaps the thing was no more the delusive aftermath of an earlier shock. That is the impression I gather of those rare irresponsible moments in which when he whispers disjointed things to me, things which he repudiates vehemently as soon as he gets a grip on himself again. It will be hard work deterring others from the great white South, and some of our efforts will may directly harm our cause by drawing inquiring notice. We might have known for the first that the human curiosity is undying, and that the results we announced would be enough to spur others ahead on the same age-long pursuit of the unknown. Lake's reports of those biological monstrosities had aroused naturalists and paleontologists to the highest pitch, though we were sensible enough not to show the detached parts we had taken from the actual buried specimens, or of our photographs of the specimens as they were found. We also refrained from showing the more puzzling of the scarred bones and the greenish soapstones, while Danforth and I closely guarded the pictures we took or drew on the super plateau across the range, and the crumpled things we smoothed, studied in terror, and brought away in our pockets. But now that stark weather memorial party was organizing, and with thoroughness far beyond anything our outfit had attempted, if not dissuaded, they will get to the innermost nucleus of the Antarctic and melt and bore until they bring up that which may end the world we know. So I must break through all reticence at last, even by that ultimate nameless thing beyond the mountains of madness.